Welcome once again to the Liberty Lounge. I'm Johnny B, and I'm joined, of course, with Anthony, the arms scholar. You know that guy. He's out in California, and he's waving at us, those of y'all watching us on YouTube. And, of course, to my left is Jared Guns and Gadgets, and he's waving as well. Super excited today. We have congressional candidate and our friend Brandon Herrera joining us from Texas. Brandon, was there a moment when you said, okay, I'm tired of being on the sidelines, I am taking my hat off and I'm slinging it into the ring? Was there a moment when you said, I'm doing this?
Yeah. It was a really slow burn. It started out, originally it was a joke. The original inception was actually looking at Senator Fetterman, thinking like, Jesus Christ, if they can let him in the Senate, any of us can be in the House. And I think I'm starting to accidentally prove that. Because I just really that inspired me to start looking into more, especially like watching a lot of the votes of my representative Tony Gonzalez, and like some of the stuff, especially with gun control, caught my attention right off the bat, because that's what we all do, right? Like, this is our industry. We pay attention to that stuff, and realizing, man, this guy votes like a Democrat. What the hell is going on here? And just got more and more fed up with it, and I'm finally just, as a pissed off constituent, nothing's changing. So, sometimes you got to step up and do it yourself.
Yeah, I think it's great that you're doing it. I've been going around for years telling people, if you don't think they're doing a good job, you can probably do better. And it's great to see one of us actually step up and do it. So, man, my hat is off to you for putting yourself out there. As you know, it's not easy when everybody's looking for every little thing you've done wrong since you were, in the Wamba. So good on you, man. Seriously.
It's more so than I would have expected. I knew it was going to get dirty, but man, it's
quick on Twitter.
It's a lot more time, and it's
So for folks who don't understand a runoff, tell everybody about your runoff, what they can do to help you, because we want to help you any way we can, and tell them about the date of that runoff.
Sure. So going back to the beginning, people complain about the two-party system because they just, get handed slop in November and they have to vote for the lesser of two evils. But in reality, people need to get more involved in the primaries, because in a lot of places, primaries are more important than the actual election. So primary, for those unfamiliar, most of you guys should know, but real quick, TLDR, primaries are where you get to choose who the representative is for that party in each election. And so a lot of times you get a choice between the establishment candidate and the actual candidate you want, but nobody's heard of. So that's what we did this time around. We were primarying the establishment candidate. Thanks to the help of a few other people, we were able to take him below 50%. Now, it's funny the amount of people who texted me the next morning. They saw that, because he got about 45%, I got about 25%. And for people who don't understand runoff elections, I had texts from friends of mine that were like, man, so close, better luck next time, dude. I hope you run again. And I'm like, I'm still in the race, baby. It's still going. So what happens now, because it was a crowded primary, there's 5 people in it. So now that, because we took the establishment incumbent below 50% by a decent margin, he wasn't close. We got him down to like 45. Because he didn't get that 50% mark, now he's forced into a special secondary election on May 28th. So it's now just me and him, 1v1 on Rust, and we're going hard into it.
And the cool thing is that there were enough people who chose not to vote for him that if they decide to come on and vote for you, you will easily win this election. So you absolutely can win this election, which I think is important for people to understand. You can still help Brandon win no matter where you are in the country. You can help. I've sent money to his campaign, and I live in Tennessee. And if you believe that you can help him, Brandon, give him the website right quick.
It's BrandonHerreraForCongress.com. And we're actually still doing a thing until April 5th that, the big creator range days we do and everything. Obviously, you guys all have the invite, but any donation over $5 is an entry to get an invite to that range day. You and a +1, all expenses paid. So doing little giveaways and stuff like that, really getting the community involved, has been an awesome way to do fundraising. And to be honest, it's hilarious because the DC money machine has no clue what to do about it. Yeah. And to watch them scramble and figure out how to take down an internet candidate for the first time has been really, really funny to watch, because shockingly, they're not good at it.
Yeah. I actually want to play off that, because that's something we brought up in the last podcast, because we had talked about you in the runoff the last podcast, and Johnny had brought up the point, your Tony Gonzalez had over like $1 million in endorsements and money to spend, and you're nowhere near that.
More than almost 3 million.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, he spent I think 1.8 so far.
Wow. Yeah, and so Johnny had posed a question to me, like, do you think Brandon's lack of that type of funding is going to hinder him? I said, well, no, because money just really in elections buys you attention. You spend money for attention, and Brandon's already got that. So can you talk about like what is your approach with, because obviously you already have a huge audience base, you already have a huge following, and it is really funny to see how Tony and the system that's there in DC is trying to adjust to you memeing them into oblivion on Twitter and responding to these hit pieces that he's putting out and just getting community noted every single time, and his poor intern pulling his hair out trying to find stuff about you online.
It's been fun to watch. It's been fun to watch, that's for sure. Especially on Twitter. My God, Twitter. Elon Musk nailed it. Twitter is or X is the PvP server of social media. And if you're not used to it and you don't know how to fight that kind of game, which they don't, it's pretty rough. It's pretty rough. But as far as the money game goes, money's still super critical to a campaign. Our fundraising has been fantastic. And that's thanks to all the viewers, and that's thanks to a lot of the grassroots support we've been able to get, because we don't have any big DC money. We don't have any of that. I don't want to call any particular people out because I might need them in November. But certain groups that are spending a lot of money against me right now in the runoff and in the primary, we don't have access to those coffers. So everything we have to do is grassroots. But because at the end of the day, this is the, can I swear?
Yeah. Yes. Go for it.
Okay. The shitty part of politics is that it is a money game to a degree, because you can be the best candidate possible. You can be the candidate that everybody in your district wants. But if you can't pay to tell them, whether that's radio, TV, mailers, all sorts of different venues, if you can't pay to tell anyone that, you're still not going to win.
Yep.
And so that's where money becomes a necessity. The good news for us, though, is that your $100,000 spends a lot better than your millionth dollar, and your millionth dollar spends a lot better than your $3 millionth dollar. So we don't need to match him on fundraising. We just need to have enough to get our message out, which we clearly were able to do in the primary. And now that the other candidates are no longer in play, but are rallying behind, because we all had the same message of getting Tony out. Now that that's true, I think he's going to have a very hard time in May, because realistically speaking, the kind of candidates or the kind of voters who show up to a runoff election, a very special runoff election, are the kind of voters that are pissed. And so that's what we got on our side.
Brandon, let me ask you this. As you know, we all know the swamp. We all know that DC is a I don't know, a big pile of filth with flies circling around it. And you jump in the middle of this and have signed up. You have signed up to go get in the middle of all of this. Has there been a moment as you've walked through and as your candidacy got pretty doggone serious the other Tuesday? Has there been a moment where you've gone, oh my gosh, I'm stepping into the sewer, like politics is dirty? Because we know that they've been doing some public hit pieces on you, but it's Twitter. It's very entertaining. The fact that you're the #1 comment on those hit pieces is so much fun, but that's public and that's kind of fun. Has there been some behind the scenes stuff that you've gone, oh my Lord, what have I done?
Almost every morning when I wake up and look in the mirror, I mean, it's a big commitment, because I take it seriously. Like, I make a lot of jokes, and obviously comedy is kind of my thing, but I take it extraordinarily seriously. The job is not a joke to me, not in the least. And I think I could be a voice to people who are as pissed off as I was. Like I often say, like when I do rallies and things, is you guys are in the room for the same reason I'm in the room, is I was pissed off at my representation. So that fire, anytime I feel like quitting or anytime I feel like I'm in over my head, that fire kind of keeps me going, because I know that we're sending a message that was definitely heard around Texas and was heard loud and clear in DC. There's a lot. I can't even talk about it on air. I'll talk to you guys about it after you want, but like the things I've heard from DC from specific people, they do not like me there, because I'm throwing a wrench in what they've been able to. the status quo they've been able to maintain.
What's the voice? That's what's coming from the politicians. What are you hearing when you're on the street and you're kissing babies? You've already said that they're pissed. What are you hearing in the trenches of Texas down there on the border? How are people's attitudes? What are they talking about? What are they dealing with? What are you experiencing in the face-to-face with your potential district?
Well, the thing that I hear most often, and this was a surprise to me, because when I started going out into the when I started going out into the district months ago, and really just hitting it hard, and having meet and greets daily, and just seeing all these border towns and a lot of the places that people have forgotten, and they feel forgotten by their representatives. The last time Tony went out to when's the last time Tony went out to some place like Alpine, Texas? These people never hear from their representatives. And unfortunately, Tony talked a good game in 2020. He talked like a real conservative. I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to fight for the border. Because immigration is huge in District 23. Because we have over 800 miles of border with Mexico. It's the biggest border district in the entire country. So the border crisis, we're on ground zero of it. And you go to these little towns. New York City has said that they don't have the infrastructure to handle the immigration crisis when it came to their doorstep. How do you feel? How do you think Fort Davis feels? How do you think, Del Rio, Texas feels? Like these small towns, like these people feel abandoned, and like it's almost spiteful, So there's a lot of frustration with it, and there's people that are looking for somebody who's not. What we started saying is that somebody who's not just going to talk about it, but somebody who's going to be about it, and that's what I hope we can be for them.
And for those who aren't following the socials, I don't know why, but last week you were able to have an event with Matt Gaetz, which got you an additional spotlight thrown on you, because Matt has the eyeballs of that type of person who we want voting in this country, people who are just pissed off and sick of the BS. Have you seen a good bump from hanging around, from having that event with Matt? And then give us an update on that AK-50.
There we go. I was waiting for it. We made it 11 minutes in. The Gaetz thing was huge, because Matt, I would consider him to be a friend. He's somebody that I look forward to working with in Congress, because he's not one that goes along and gets along. He's there for the right reasons, and he wants to throw a wrench in the establishment machine, which is something I am always down for. It's awesome to work with him and to get his support, because that was bold. That was a bold move for a sitting incumbent congressman to endorse against his coworker. That doesn't happen. That's not a thing that really happens very often.
Why do you think it did? Why?
Because for the same reason that I like the guy, is because he doesn't care what the establishment wants. And he's like, you know what? I really, I don't like working with this Tony guy. He votes like a Democrat. I get to choose my coworker, and I feel like this guy has a chance of actually unseating him and becoming an ally, and not somebody who fights against liberty and things in Congress. So I have, again, a lot of respect for him for that, because that did take courage to do, because the entire establishment is, I'm sure, currently chewing him out over it. But the man stands by what he believes, and the AK-50, don't worry, she's safe. I've got a video that we've been working. The annoying part, I'll get real with that for a minute. We may or may not have had it done for months. We just have been doing a very high production job on this video to make sure that it's worthy of the AK-50 is finished kind of thing. So we're just making sure we don't, spoil the surprise.
I'll believe it when I see it.
I'll send you videos after we're done. They just have to stay with you.
I'm going to send them to Tony.
Yeah. You want to know how to really hurt this guy?
Yeah. AK-50.
Honestly, like if he steered into the meme, and like his next campaign ad was wear AK-50, that would hurt more than anything in the world.
Yeah. Brandon Herrera has promised the AK-50 for years now.
Texas deserve an AK-50.
All right, Brandon, here's a really important question. You're hanging out with Matt Gaetz, who I've always been not just entertained by, but respected a lot of his decisions and the things that he's done. But he's also got some doggone good hair. When you're hanging out with him, like, does he give you the eye going, hey, I'm going to support you, but you're always going to be number 2 in the hair game?
So we made a joke about that at the event, because when I did my testimony, so Matt Gaetz called me down to Florida to testify in a congressional field hearing with him and Marjorie Taylor Greene against the ATF last year. And it was a privilege to do it. Like I said, talking shit about the ATF is God. I would drop anything to do that in a capacity that would matter. So we did that, and I snuck that into the video. It was a little Easter egg because at this time I had already done my polling. I already knew that I was going to run for Congress. I knew what we were doing, and it had nothing to do with this hearing. Like he did not. Matt didn't know until the day I announced. So like he didn't know at the time. Nobody knew. So it wasn't like a planned thing. But when I went out and shook his hand afterward, oh, thank you so much for having me down, blah, blah, blah. Like there was a joke made about like his hair, whatever, or stuff. I can't remember exactly what I said, but he's like, hey, I'm just happy. I'm just happy enough to have the best hair in Congress. And I laughed and I'm like, that's definitely true. And I turned the camera for now. And then, like that bit aged so well. I'm so glad.
So, doors have opened. You've met a lot of folks. Any surprises there as you meet these folks that we've all followed for years and we've respected from afar? What's it been like behind the scenes? Are there folks that we know Gaetz is, but are there folks that are actually walking the walk to the talk that they do when the cameras are on? How has it been behind the scenes getting to know these folks?
So everybody's kind of got their politician facade, if that makes sense. And it's not necessarily like in a shady sense. It's just, they're man of the people. You have to be kind of a little bit more clean cut. I'm sure people will wish I was a little bit more of that and a lot of things. But, I know a time and place, right? Like I know when I can talk shit on the internet and when I have to be, professional in a, at a campaign stop or a rally and, not dropping F-bombs and things like that. And doing the sensible folk thing. But I usually can tell when I've met plenty of members of Congress and people in very esteemed positions in the last 6 months or so, especially in the last few. And I can always tell when I'm talking to the real person because you'll have somebody that, is very good at the political game. They've got their politician face on. And then you'll talk to them on the phone. And then 5 minutes in, they're like, I'm quoting somebody that I can't talk about right now, but like, he has great character. Like, all right, listen, here's the real lowdown on that commenter. And then I'm like, okay, all right, now I'm talking to the real person. The facade is gone. This is the real homie. He's saying what he actually thinks. And there's a lot of good fighters in there. I'll say that. There's a lot of people that behind the scenes they're doing God's work.
I'm glad you went there because that was a question I wanted to ask you. Is now that you're behind the scenes, you can behind the curtain, so to speak, and you're talking to these folks on a one-to-one basis. How many of them are tied in to the Second Amendment like we are? Are they? I know a couple. I know Matt is, and I know a couple others that are, like Thomas Massey. How many behind closed doors have told you that they're really tied in? They really, really believe in this stuff, or are they? Are they just politicians who believe what their aides tell them or what the polls tell them?
I mean, there's a lot, and I don't. There's a lot of people that I'm sure are like they're not anti-Second Amendment by any means, but they also like don't care as much as we do because it's not their whole bread and butter. Like they're not. This isn't their diehard issue, but they know they have to vote a certain way, and we all have issues like that. We don't. All of us have areas that we're not like subject matter experts in, that we're just like, okay, but this is the party line. This is how, how you vote with the Constitution. This is how you vote with freedom. Like, okay, that's why I know it's important, but it's not their main issue. There's a lot of other people though. Like I'll name drop Andrew Clyde, the congressman out of Georgia. Yeah, I mean, he's an FFL.
Yeah, he's solid.
He's rad. Like that guy's been fighting the ATF personally for years. So he's another good voice that not a lot of people know about, but he's actually he's a rad dude in person too.
Today's episode is brought to you by blackoutcoffee.com, and you can save 20% off your first order, blackoutcoffee.com/liberty, and you can also use the code liberty. If you're a big manly man like my other three friends here, you may open your day with Brutal Awakening. If you're a little softer like me, you may open it with Blueberry Crumble, and that's okay too. We accept all guys of all masculinity. It's blackoutcoffee.com/liberty, and use that code liberty for 20% off your first order. All right, Brandon, let's step away from politics for a moment and talk a little bit about the gun industry. We love it. We love not just the creator side of it, but also the actual industry itself. And we all pay attention. We all make memes. We all like to laugh. Where are we getting it right now in the gun world or the creator world within the 2A?
I hate that this comes right back to politics too. Shit. I think where we're getting it right is that we've now realized that guns are inherently political, and that you like, because a lot of people have been like, well, I just want to talk about guns. I don't want to talk about, and I was like that for a while too. Like I always knew guns were inherently political, so like politics got involved a little bit, and especially more and more in the last few years. But a lot of people wanted to stay Switzerland because they didn't want to alienate people. They want everybody welcome in the gun community, the gun industry, and that's fair. There's an argument to be made for that. But the attacks never stop, and they're getting worse and worse. And I think people are starting to realize, especially now that they're going after the industry specifically, with a lot of things, a lot of bills and things that are meant to target manufacturers and make it financially impossible for manufacturers to actually operate. I think people are realizing, like, we don't have a choice. Like, we have to put a voice behind it. So you got more YouTubers and more people in the community, and more people and more companies in the industry that are starting to take more political stands and less people being Switzerland. And I think that's going to benefit us in the long run.
I actually want to play off of that a little bit, because I think one of the big knocks on Tony and why you are adamantly against him is because of his vote on things like the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. And there's been a lot of guys who are quote unquote conservatives or Republicans who ran on politics of being pro-gun, and then all of a sudden they're voting for these pieces of legislation, which at the time we saw a lot of people in the conservative realm talking about how the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act was not that big of a deal. I even saw comments on my videos when I would, in my audience, when I would do a breakdown of that piece of legislation, I would get people in the 2A space who were saying, it's not that big of a deal. It's not going to have that big of an impact. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, we saw the ATF come out with their new proposed rule on restricting private party transfers through language in the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. So was that one of the big reasons? Obviously, you're a 2A guy, you're a gun guy. Was that one of the biggest knocks on Tony, where you said you have another guy who claims to be conservative, claims to be Republican, but lo and behold, once again, they're voting for these pieces of legislation? And do you think he actually understood what that was, or did he just play the party line of there were certain groups of guys who were voting for it and didn't actually read or care about what it said?
Well, now correct me if I'm wrong. I'm like talking to the group of experts who would know about this bill. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't. They call it Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, but I think it was only like 17 turncoat Republicans that ended up voting for it. It wasn't crazy.
Yeah,
No.
but it was just enough to get it past that mark.
It was just enough.
John Cornyn and Mitch McConnell.
Yeah, John Cornyn, one of my favorite people. You're next, John. But the thing that drove me crazy about that in particular, and this is a little bit of like not insider knowledge, anybody can look it up, but something you wouldn't know to look up, is that Tony voted no on a bill of very similar language to the Safer Communities Act just prior to Uvalde. They were trying to pass that same kind of shit, and he voted no and had this strong pro-gun line and everything like that. He's freshman congressman just elected, and was actually doing a better job than he is now. I'll put it that way. And because it became politically inconvenient in the district, at least in his mind, to be pro-gun, that's what changed his opinion. And that, more than anything, that drives me crazy, because it's like, okay, so you're telling me you don't have any fucking principles. You're telling me that you have this strong pro-gun stance here, and then as soon as a shooting happens or something, then all of a sudden you vote for almost the exact same bill just because you're worried about voters in your district. And it was kind of like a purple district for a bit. We had a Republican advantage, but now it's completely been redistricted, and we have a huge Republican advantage. So really the primary is the election a lot in District 23 now. So like, we don't have to worry about that stuff anymore. Why are you still voting for liberal bills? Why are you still not being the hardline Republican that the Texans want you to be? And so that's why this runoff is going to be important, is because the Texans can actually get the conservative that they want, not the milquetoast Republican that they had to tolerate.
And I think that's huge because that has happened across the country where people have voted a certain way or politicked on a certain way or ran on a certain ticket a certain way. And then when unfortunate incidents happen, they get scared. They get scared of the public, kicking back on them. They get scared of the moms demand action and the every town is putting pressure on them and they flip. And I just wish that more people like yourself who are sick and tired of seeing that happen, because it's not a new phenomenon. It's been happening for a very, very long time. I just wish more people would get involved, that would say, you know what, maybe I am the right decision for my district or my school committee or what have you. Folks, this is how we take this country back. Like, a lot of us like to bitch and complain about it. But we are the fix. And the more we understand that's what the forefathers wanted, I think the better we get back to America being America. So Brandon, my hat off, if I had a hat, my hat is off to you for doing it, dude, man, because we need more people to do it. And for you to put your money where your mouth is, it says a lot about you, man. Thank you.
No, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate all the help you guys have offered as well. This has definitely aged me 3 years in the last 3 months. Like, I look at myself in the mirror nowadays and I'm like, you are not a young man anymore. But you're on it though. Like, you're 100% over the mark as far as like, this is how we take our country back. And people don't realize, like, I'm doing something kind of I'm doing something absurd, right? I'm taking on a federal level incumbent Republican congressman, one of the best funded Republicans in Texas, and on a federal level. You don't have to do that. Like, my buddy Wes, shout out to him. He just won his primary here in Texas on a state level against a Rhino incumbent, and he's going to win again in November. And he's a great voice. I was just with him here at the Capitol earlier today. Great dude. I mean, like, awesome guy. The more local you get, you don't have to go crazy federal and like take down AOC or something like that. You can do stuff in your local state legislature. If you have a bad Rhino that represents you now on a state level, or even like county commissioner, different stuff like that, you can start small. And even if you don't win, even if you don't have the finances or the time or whatever, even if you don't win, just giving them a decent primary challenge turns them into a better representative, because they're worried now. They're like, oh, hell, I wasn't far enough to the right, and the actual conservatives got pissed off at me and I almost lost my job. Let me not do that again. Because, like, make no mistake, having to do a runoff or having to do an actual primary fight pisses these guys off in a level that nothing else does, because they have to spend way more time, way more money. And that's actually does it. And they actually have to fight for their job. They're not used to doing that. So you can make a difference even if you don't win.
Right here in my district in Tennessee, our district, we had a congressman for decades that ran unopposed for like 35 years, did not campaign, did nothing. And we've been following you, all three of us been following you pretty closely and watching you bounce from place to place. And every time we pull up social media, holy smokes, he's here. Holy smokes, he's there. And I didn't realize that district was so big. Last week on the episode, we talked about our physical bodies and what we have been doing, and the three of us have been going through to take care of ourselves and do better in Zombieland, Rule 1 cardio. As you have moved into what may be the busiest season, you said you're even aging before your eyes. What are you doing to take care of yourself? How are you able to maintain this pace?
I do a lot to destroy my body, that's for sure. on top of that, though, if you want to get real about it, I have a home gym. I try to stay in it. Not nearly as regularly as I should, but I try to keep up with that. I take a daily multivitamin supplement. I got a package of vitamins, probiotics, different things like that, like B complex vitamins. And I try to box still. Like, I don't box like I was training for my fight last year, because that was absurd. But I still, like, at least once every week or two, I go in the gym with Eli and the boys and we beat the shit out of each other, because there is no cardio like boxing.
Unpack a little bit. What do you think is going to take place with Mike Tyson and Jake Paul? What do you think? Is it real? Is it staged? How's this fight going to go down?
Look, one way or the other, I wouldn't bet against the Pauls. And I don't know if that's because they're good or because they have the whole thing bought and paid for. Yeah. Dude, Mike Tyson's fucking old, but he is still a killer. He was a killer from the time he was 15, and he's a downright scary human. So I'm glad I'm not in the guy. I'm glad I'm not the guy in the ring with him. That's for sure.
I think we know in the first 15 seconds if it's a real fight, because if Mike comes out bobbing his head and throwing those hooks, it's over. If it's a real fight, if Tyson decides to actually swing hard, it's done.
If it's real, I was really glad when they decided to take the headgear off. I mean, I don't want to be punched in the face no matter what. But me watching them when they said that Tyson was going to have to wear headgear, I'm like, come off it. Well, they did come off it, and they're not going to be wearing the headgear.
Oh, that's awesome. So like I heard that somebody said that they were going to use headgear. I'm like, oh, if they're using headgear and I think 20-ounce gloves, that's sparring.
Yeah,
I was sparring with 16-ounce. Like that's
they are going to use 16 ounces, but no headgear. I think we'll know pretty fast. Speaking of,
that's not a real pro fight though.
But
like that,
Tyson can knock somebody out with a pillow on his hand. So I don't think he can still hit.
Fair.
I'm absolutely.
But I mean, like for context to the audience, like typical pro fights are 10-ounce gloves.
Yeah, I'm absolutely pumped about it. Hey, take us to election night when this was going down. Was there a moment where you said, "Holy crap, we got a shot here"? Because we were all watching it, and holy smokes, it was so excited. I didn't get the good news until the next day. But how was election night?
So first, I actually want to hear it from your perspective because I'm curious. I didn't know you guys were watching the race that close, so I'm curious what you guys were thinking the whole time.
I'm a geek with politics, man. I was stoked when I saw his first number didn't have a 5 in front of it because I knew you had a chance. Because I believe if you got to the point where you are now in a runoff, that you're going to win the election. That's how I thought going into it. And when it was finalized, I think they called it with like 80% reporting that he had in the 40s, dude. It was awesome because one of us, like somebody we hang around with at all these events, is going to actually have a serious shot of hanging around in the Capitol. It's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting, and I was like, oh, he's got a shot. Oh, he's got a real shot. Oh, this is going to get really interesting. And like Jared said, it's exciting because one of us, Google gobble, one of us. It would be cool. I would love to have you in the house, and if you ended up like on a committee and you get to just ream the ATF if they have to come in and explain a rule or something. I mean, because a lot of the times we're nerds, we're politics nerds, we're gun nerds, and so we listen to a lot of those committee hearings and a lot of the stuff that goes on. And sometimes, like with the pistol brace stuff that happened, in the judicial committees, and you have people talking about how pistol braces are actually bump stocks, and I just want to pull my hair. I'm like, these people have no concept about what they are talking about. I would love for someone who actually understands guns to be on these committees and actually understands and represents. Obviously, you have a huge base on YouTube that are gun lovers that are very tied in this issue who want a true voice. Now, you said there are some guys, of course, but they're just not enough. So I was excited.
A lot of these people, they seem like they are like the ones talking. Like I remember that specific quote, the guy describing the pistol brace as if it was, and that's what allows it to go full auto. I'm like, these people are clinically retarded.
Yeah.
But
and then when they're pushed back against it, that they double down, like, no, I know exactly what I'm talking about. No, you don't. Like, look at this picture up here. I got this. My intern made this poster board. Like, this is what it is.
Yeah, God bless Thomas Massey. Thomas Massey was the only one that day. He's like, wait, really? Are y'all really going to be going? And like, he was the only sane person there. Like, it's hard to believe these folks have power and control over our lives on some level.
It's terrifying. That's one of the things that's going to be in my my video testifying against that assault weapons ban in Denver, because I literally got up there. I'm like, I have not heard a single expert testify yet.
Yeah,
this has all been tear jerkers and people who obviously like have trauma that they've experienced or loved ones that they've lost and things, and that's sad too. But like, you don't get to testify on serious practical issues as far as like what parts of a firearm are dangerous and things if you have no clue what you're talking about. And that's the majority of things. But well, on the election night side of things, the first number I saw, I knew we were going to do it. It was a weird moment because I didn't quite think it was true. Because I was told like early voting gets counted first, and so early voting is going to favor the incumbent, especially since we hadn't spent the majority of our money yet. So the early voting was always going to favor Tony for like two different reasons. And the first number I saw was that he was at 50.1%. And I immediately just, oh, fuck. Like my next 12 weeks are done. This is full-time job now.
Yeah,
So
I want to ask you about that because obviously all of us are content creators. How are you balancing what's going on with all the politics with what was kind of your main job for a while, which is content? Like, how are you balancing? Because I already know all of us are so busy as it is, and then you added this on top of that, which is one of the most demanding things you can do. I mean, we travel so much as it is already as content creators, and now you add on the political travel and demands. How are you balancing that?
one, not well. Two, I have a cheat code, which is kind of cool, is that I can kind of turn one job into the other, where it's like what I'm doing in the politics is now partially the YouTube thing.
Yeah.
So like I'm talking about the politics on YouTube and things like that. And I'm using the YouTube because like I don't feel bad if, for example, I'd have to be going to fundraising dinners. I'd have to be doing all sorts of stuff. I was doing things the traditional way. Where in reality now I can go shoot shit at Demolition Ranch, blow up a ballistic dummy head, and then make 30 grand to the campaign for the push that we do for giveaways and things like that. Like those are real deliverables to where I don't feel bad doing my regular job because they are so closely intertwined.
Yeah.
It's kind of like how I balance the manufacturing, the firearm manufacturing side of things with the YouTube. It's like, well, they're kind of yin and yang. They go hand in hand. So it's a huge time commitment, and I don't get to wake up at 11 o'clock anymore. That's for sure.
My last question for you, brother, is if you do cross that finish line ahead of the turtle, Tony, what does your future look like? Are you still going to be able to, I know you want to run the channel, but realistically, you're going to be able to run that channel. And I think when you do, I'm going to predict when you do win the election, you need to find an escalator to come down and do some bit about Tony Gonzalez.
I already have a bit planned. I can't. I'll do it because I'll probably. I don't know if I'll do it or not. I'll tell you guys here. It'll be a fun Easter egg for the people that know. If I got elected, I would. I have a bit planned where my first video back in Texas is going to start with me sprinting into my house through my front door, sprinting through my office, and slamming the door shut behind me. It's true. All of it. They all fuck kids.
This has been the Liberty Lounge, where we talk about faith, fun, firearms, and freedom. Holy smokes, I have had an absolute blast. It's Brandon Herrera for U.S. Congress, Texas 23. And even if you are not in that district, you can still help out. It's at BrandonHerreraForCongress.com. Brandon, tell me your wish list. If you got voted in, is there a committee? Because the power in Congress is on those committees. Where do you think you could make the biggest difference in D.C.?
Well, obviously, destroying the ATF is a huge priority of mine. The gun issue is something that I actually feel like I could be very useful in, as being one of the few places I'm actually a legitimate subject matter expert. And I feel like more of those are needed for sure. The good guys need backup. And then on top of that, there's a few other things. I don't know, the Department of Homeland Security, specifically for border issues, I think is going to be huge. Just because obviously District 23 is just such a huge border district. That's something where I could be really helpful in. But aside from that, the Committee on Veterans Affairs is something that with all the work that we do with a lot of the veteran community around here, and a lot of the stuff we've done, Gold Star families, VA. God, all the issues going on in the VA right now are ridiculous. It should be a bipartisan issue. It really should.
I
God
thought
forbid.
Tony said you hate veterans. I'm confused.
He likes to keep saying that. It's like I love all the shit I get for things that we joke about, and I'm like, everyone at this fucking table is a veteran. Like the people at this table saw more combat than Tony did, which means any.
Yeah.
It drives me up a wall. Such a weird issue, but that's something I'm genuinely interested in helping with, because there's so many people in this district that have been abandoned by Tony, that need help with their VA disability rating, or they've been talking to his office, and they said that he's going to help you, and then they hand them to a staffer, and then the staffer stops talking to them after 2 weeks, and they're just left to hang out to dry, which is really unfortunate. We made a promise to these people: if you're going to, give up the best years of your life, you're going to give up your body for your country. At least we can do is take care of you, and we're not doing that.
And that's a big amen from me. However y'all found us, however you're watching us, we're glad you did. It's the Liberty Lounge on behalf of Jared and Anthony. Brandon, thank you for being a part of this, and good luck and Godspeed.
Thank you guys for having me. It means a lot. And I'm friends with all you guys. I've seen you at more events than I can count, and I always appreciate hanging out with you guys. So thank you so much for having me. Appreciate being a part of your podcast so early. And God, I hope you guys have success with it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.